Good day, Professor Mel and classmates. I am Carmela Jane Evlior, and I will be discussing today social marketing for social mobilization and social marketing to mobilize public will. Let us have a recap of the previous discussions where social marketing and social mobilization were defined. In our Module 2, social marketing had a lot of definitions. It is defined as the application of marketing principles to sell socially desirable products, ideas, and practice. According to Kotler, it is the design, implementation, and control of programs calculated to influence the acceptability of social ideas involving consideration of product, price, place, and promotion. It aims to primarily influence consumer behavior for socially desirable products. It is also the application of commercial marketing technologies to the analysis, planning, execution, and evaluation of programs designed to influence the voluntary behavior of target audiences. Social marketing is a mindset in its emphasis on consumer needs and corresponding preoccupation with segmentation and research. It is more on thinking to filling in a customer's needs rather than of having a great product or lifestyle to sell. It is a process in its description of who marketers can control and modify the aspects of the four Ps. Social mobilization, as defined by McKee, is the process of bringing together all feasible and practical intersectoral and social allies. People are organized in order to enable them to collectively think and act upon their development. Social mobilization is also to assist in the delivery of resources and services and to strengthen community participation and sustainability and self reliance. This being said, it is the process of bringing together all societal and personal influences to raise awareness and demand for healthcare, assist in the delivery of resources and services, and cultivate sustainable individual and community involvement. In order to employ social mobilization, members of institutions, community partners, and organizations and others collaborate to reach specific groups of people for intentional dialogue. Social mobilization aims to facilitate change through an interdisciplinary approach. Now that we have recapped social marketing and social mobilization, we will now relate these two to public will for social change. Public will campaigns are organized, strategic initiatives designed to legitimize and garner public support for social problems as mechanism of achieving policy action or change. The goal of public will campaign is to alter the potential of a social problem in such a way that it moves from a small thing or issue into a much higher and structured profile and a concrete policy agenda. Public will campaigns are vital to policies because legislators or policymakers would be able to consider the public's point of view, concerns, and even outputs. Just like any activity, there will always be struggles. Public planners hurdle challenges such as beyond the ideology of individualism. Public planners' efforts may be criticized and delegitimized as rooted in politics or partisanship. By instituting change beyond the individual level, public will campaigners may be viewed with suspicion or greeted with accusations of politicizing otherwise scientific issues. What they are working on and pushing over may be seen as just self serving. The next is public opinion or effective public opinion. Since people have different and diverse stand on things, public opinion may be regarded as meaningless. This is according to Herbert Bloomer, who is known for his scathing yet insightful critique of the public opinion industry for its confusion in attempting to study public opinion by merely refining the technique of survey research. He added that public opinion was a mere display of terminal in its very expression, or never came to the attention of those who have to act on public opinion. He emphasized that public opinion is the expression of sentiment that reaches the systematic agenda of political decision makers through lobbying and other forms of communication, or indirectly through publics motivated to mobilize for political action. The goal of public opinion is to ensure that an organization's efforts to define a social problem and its solutions reach the ears and eyes of those with power to allocate resources and choose policy alternatives. This is the goal more than generating awareness or influence. The last challenge is community as mechanism of change. Individuals may make choices, but they do so from options determined by their environments. Even establishments like restaurants, grocery stores, or local media, schools, churches, voluntary associations, government offices, and other community institutions are actively involved in a change effort and shaping environmental, health related options. Individuals' choices will necessarily be affected. If these institutions are not participating nor reinforcing campaign themes and desired choices, efforts to mobilize the public will unlikely be successful. If there are hindrances to public will campaigners, there are also theories and models from allied fields that can help inform designers of public will campaigners. These are social problem construction, agenda building, framing, mass communication and social perceptions, social capital, and social marketing. Social problem construction. Public will campaigns begin with a social problem that needs to be addressed. Zastro posited that a social problem exists when an influential group asserts that a certain condition affecting a large number of people is a problem that may be remedied by a collective action. Our notion of what is considered to be a social problem or not is a product or something that has been produced or constructed through social activities as opposed to the objective conditions themselves. An example provided for this theory or model is the occurrence of young, poor, unmarried women having babies. It may not be seen problematic for some, but it is a fairly routine and expected biological outcome. It becomes a social problem only in the context of a particular chronological era and social structure when some influential individual or group provides a label to the phenomenon and claims that the condition is indeed a social problem. It is seen as a social problem due to the following factors. For a religious claims maker, there is moral decline in society and the need for stronger religious institutions. For public health claims maker, failed sex education programs in schools. For a, for a child psychologist, from the perspective of the child who will be born into a perpetual cycle of poverty. For a feminist scholar, it is the failure of a patriarchal setup that ignored the plight of women and children. And lastly, for an economist, it is the burden that places on welfare rolls and government subsidies in capitalist societies. Social problem construction also make use of typification and use of numbers and statistics to back up claims. Agenda building focuses on explaining the process through which some issues emerge and gain prominence in the media, court system, and or legislatures, whereas either issues never achieve public prominence. Obvious implications for public will campaigns by its emphasis on strategies that can be used to gain access to the public and systematic agenda. Framing refers to the persistent patterns of cognition, interpretation, and presentation of selection, emphasis, and exclusion by which symbols handlers routinely organize discourse, whether verbal or visual. Framing for access includes the use of such tactics, tying a new story with some anniversary of a historical event, touting a new breakthrough or discovery, linking a new story with a celebrity, finding an ironic twist in an issue, identifying a local angle to an otherwise national story, or linking a story to a holiday or a seasonal event. Before the field of mass communication enjoyed a renaissance in the early 1970s, some scholars concluded that media seemingly had little empirically verifiable impact on individuals and society. Agenda setting and spiral of silence are two theories significant to the study of public will. Agenda setting is research that is initially focused on the relationship between media coverage of issues and perceptions of issue importance among the general public. while spiral of silence is the people's willingness to express their opinions on controversial public issues is affected by their largely unconscious perception of those opinions as being either popular or unpopular. If individuals perceive that their opinion on a controversial topic is shared by a majority or is gaining momentum in the public sphere, they will feel confident expressing it in public. On the other hand, if individuals perceive that their opinion is held only by a minority or is discredited or unpopular, they may be reluctant to express it publicly. Social capital is an investment in social relations with expected returns in the marketplace. The core idea of social capital is that actors are linked and have the potential of communicating and exchanging resources of all kinds. It is a resource in the form of informal networks and a means to influence the public will. In social capital, we can also see that communities affect people's ideology. People tend to go along with the public will when they are invested. Examples of community organizations where members are invested are churches, neighborhoods, door to door campaigns, environmental issues like preserving water cleanliness, air quality controls. With social capital, it may be noted that people with less financial capital and more social capital can make powerful strides in social change regardless of financial status. Factors such as grassroots involvement, personal networks among activists and media professionals, and coalition building can compensate for meager financial resources if community residents understand the shared benefits of social change. Social marketing is the application of marketing developed in the commercial sector to the solution of social problems where the bottom line is behavior change. This is a tool for mobilizing the public will, though it operates quite differently. It is a mindset in its emphasis on consumer needs and corresponding preoccupation with segmentation and research. It is a process in its description of how marketers can control and modify the aspects of the four Ps to induce change. The following advocacies illustrate elements of the previously described theoretical frameworks. They are as follows: the fall and rise of ALAR, Americans for Gun Safety, Click It or Ticket, Smoking, California Initiatives, Violence Against Women Act, the Susan J. Komen Race for the Cure, and the National Safe Kids Campaign. Alar or daminazide is a growth hormone used to keep apples on trees longer, allowing growers more time to harvest the crop. It was first sold in the US in 1968. 5 years later, the Journal of the National Cancer Institute reported that Alar caused cancer in mice. The National Resources Defense Council began studying the effects of Alar and many common pesticides and chemicals on both adults and children and published their findings in 1989. Their recommendation was to ban Alar immediately. The NRDC hired a public relations firm called Fenton Communications to help garner public support. The Public Will campaign, designed to build public awareness and arouse public outrage, utilized the familiar forbidden fruit imagery to drive home the anti-Aller message. There were print ads appeared with skull and crossbones superimposed over an apple. The Garden of Eden, Snow White, Adam and Eve. Media was awash in the evil apple. Meryl Streep became a spokesperson for the cause, appearing on talk shows before Congress and at media events. There were two TV reports that aired and reports on the dangers of Aller. The Time magazine also featured an apple with a bar across it, reminiscent of the no smoking or no parking signs. The campaign worked, seeing mothers poured apple juice down the drain, apples and applesauce were no longer school lunch staples. School boards banned the use of aller-tainted apples. Finally, in 1989, the Environmental Protection Agency banned the aller due to its unacceptable risks to public health. Just 60 minutes after the campaign to stop the use of aller, the Apple industry began its own campaign to influence public will. The Apple industry mounted a counterattack, saying that the campaign was merely a hoax. It was labeled as Apple scare and media panic. This counterattack followed the same techniques as the anti-Aller campaign, influential spokesperson, plenty of media exposure, paid a prominent public relations firm, and it was just as successful. The president of the American Council on Science and Health, Elizabeth Whelan, became the colorful and influential spokesperson of the Apple industry. She made herself available to the media, always ready to give an interview for her cause. Frequent press briefings helped to spread the word. Aller was not helpful at all. The media accepted the message and ran with it. The campaign to redeem Aller continued for years. As late as 1998, a New York Times article characterized the Aller controversy as one of the greatest unfounded health scares of the last 5 decades. Through the media campaign, Aller was redeemed in the eyes of the public. By 1991, a poll indicated that nearly 70% of the population believed that the Aller controversy was merely hype. 86% of the population reported confidence in the safety of agricultural products. Additionally, at least a dozen states have adopted new laws to prevent another Aller scare from repeating. These laws, known as food libel laws, allow food growers and producers to sue individuals and groups who damage their sales. Gun control has long been a controversial issue in the US. In July 2000, Andrew McKelvey formed a group focused on finding a logical compromise to the two sides. This group, Americans for Gun Safety, supports the right to own a gun, but they believe that with gun rights come with gun responsibilities. Their major objectives, as described in their website, are to close America's gun show loophole, improve the quality of background checks in every state, to enforce current laws, and to educate the public on gun safety. Early on, the AGS focused its efforts and resources to support legislation for gun safety. To help promote the McCain-Lieberman bill to close the gun show loophole, AGS created a series of advertisements that ran in print, on the radio, and on television. The purpose of this campaign was to spread public awareness of the McCain-Lieberman bill and to stimulate public activism regarding the issue. Advertisements encouraged the public to contact Congress and tell them to vote for the McCain-Lieberman bill. The Brady bill, approved years earlier, forced all licensed gun dealers to do a background check before the sale of a firearm. The strategy of AGS, targeting both gun control activists and gun owners to encourage responsible use, is gaining acceptance among gun control activists. The term gun control is being phased out, and gun violence prevention and gun safety are now in. By reframing the issue in terms of safety rather than control, Americans for Gun Safety has the potential to reach a broader audience and to gain more support. In 1985, only 26% of the North Carolina's population wore seatbelts. In less than a decade, over 80% of the population chose to wear their seatbelts regularly. This drastic change was brought about by a massive public will campaign led by North Carolina's government. In 1979, the state of North Carolina could not even pass laws on child safety seats, much less legislate adult seatbelt usage. Although the House Highway Safety Committee tried to bring child safety seat legislation to the state, the prevailing attitude in Congress valued individual rights, parental rights, and governmental non-interference. Seatbelt safety was framed as an individual problem. Safety experts from across the state rallied together to reframe traffic safety as a public health issue. With millions of dollars in preventable health and insurance costs, they argued the state had a vested interest in promoting seatbelt use. The first legislation was approved and was targeted at children, classifying the problem as a public health issue rather than parental choice. Legislators were able to pass a child restraint law. In the spring of 1985, a statewide seatbelt law was finally passed. After the law was passed, seatbelt use increased from 26% to 78%. When the law was evaluated, results showed that there were over 10,000 deaths and injuries prevented and about $500 million in savings. Gains were short lived, however. By 1990, use was down to only 60%. The need for public will was apparent. The general public was losing interest in public safety. To create public will, the governor and several seatbelt and safety advocacy groups came together to form the Governor's Highway Safety Initiative. With the governor's enthusiastic support, the Click It or Ticket campaign was born. This campaign is a high visibility, massive enforcement to reduce seatbelt law violations. There were television, radio, newspapers, and public appearances where the governor and the group spread the click it or ticket message. The initiative worked to set the media agenda, and the media was quickly saturated with messages of seatbelt safety and zero tolerance for violators. There were seatbelt checkpoints that stopped vehicles and incentives. Coupons, vouchers, etc., were provided for those who were wearing seatbelts, while there was a fine of $25 for not wearing one. The incentives proved ineffective, but the fine was effective in increasing seatbelt use. Following of North Carolina's successful program, other states across the nation now take part in similar programs. Many states follow the North Carolina model and show that most states show marked improvement in seatbelt usage. As recently as the early 1970s, smoking was still considered an acceptable practice in most public establishments. Grassroots organizations that felt smoking posed a public health concern found little support from the mainstream health organizations like the American Cancer Society, American Heart Association, and American Lung Association. The lack of support stemmed from the common acceptance of smoking as an individual behavior problem. For the activists to achieve their goal, they constructed smoking and secondhand smoke as a social problem. While smoking had long been considered a problem, albeit an individual problem, secondhand smoking was not. By constructing secondhand smoke as a social problem, the non-smokers' rights activists stood the chance of gaining support from a larger segment of the population. In 1988, Californian voters approved the California Tobacco Tax and Health Promotion Act. This legislation was the first of its kind. It increased the cigarette tax by 25 cents per pack, with similar increases on other tobacco products. The money was allocated specifically for healthcare, education, research, and the environment. One of the main goals of this campaign was to change social norms around tobacco use. The Violence Against Women's Act was passed in 1994, the result of 4 years of lobbying and decades of activism. This act was the first of its kind, comprehensively addressing the physical and sexual assault of women in public, at home, and in the justice system. This legislation also set aside money for research and statistical reporting on crimes against women to help bring what was once a hidden problem into the light. The women's rights movement in the 1970s publicized the issue of domestic violence so well that it seemed to be a new phenomenon. These grassroots movements of former battered women, feminists, and other activists gained momentum on the heels of the civil rights movement. Through protests, marches, rallies, and the media, the women's rights movement spread its message. Changing public opinion and influencing issue awareness were considered essential to the eventual passage of the act, which took 4 years in Congress. More than 1,000 groups and many more individuals expressed their support of the act through letters and phone calls to their senators and representatives. Advocacy groups such as the National Organization for Women and the Family Violence Prevention Fund lobbied heavily for the bill's passage. Breast cancer is the second most deadly form of cancer for women. Nearly 4,000 women die from breast cancer yearly. For years, however, breast cancer had been kept hidden. Women wouldn't talk about it. Doctors screened it for it at their own discretion, and public awareness was not existent. After Nancy Brinker lost her sister to breast cancer, she formed an organization dedicating to saving lives and raising breast cancer awareness. That organization, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, has grown and developed over the years. Today, it is viewed as one of the most well known, powerful, and respected organizations for promoting breast cancer awareness and policies. The Common Foundation's efforts have led to increased diagnosis, public acceptance, and a movement towards standardized medical practices. Race for the Cure is highly publicized, relying on both a national advertising campaign as well as local media to get the message out. The Race for the Cure had resulted in numerous spin off programs devoted to raising money and awareness of breast cancer. One of these programs, Champions for the Cure, encourages individuals to support public policy for breast cancer. Working through the same grassroots organizations as the Race for the Cure, the Common Foundation issues call for action utilizing public will to create better public policy both on the local and national level. The number one killer of children is unintentional injury or accidents. In 1999, 5,834 children died from unintentional injuries. In 2000, almost 7 million children ended up in emergency rooms because of unintentional injury. The National Safe Kids campaign is a comprehensive campaign to protect children from unintentional injury. Safe Kids believes that there are no accidents, only unintentional injury. The Safe Kids campaign utilized problem construction techniques to create the issue of unintentional injury. The campaign, formed in 1988, aims to change public perception of the issue, to change policy, and to prevent unintentional injuries. The strategy of the Safe Kids campaign is to conduct media outreach and create public awareness, to encourage grassroots activity through local coalitions, and to gain support for injury prevention public policy. The national campaign is made up of hundreds of local coalitions that, through support of the national agency, work to build awareness in their communities. Working on this local level to garner attention for a national cause has proven effective for the Safe Kids campaign. Local coalitions armed with information about unintentional injuries and what best prevention strategies are. National programs are tailored by the local coalitions to fit community needs. The coalitions cultivate social ties between health professionals, law enforcement, families, local businesses, and children. The National Safe Kids campaign distribute injury prevention information to the coalitions and to the media. Media outreach is instrumental in gaining public support on a broad scale. After awareness has been achieved, policy becomes the top priority. The campaign takes an active role in politics, testifying before Congress, improving legislation, and giving their support or opposition to new policy. They have supported legislation for safer playgrounds, helmet laws, handgun injury prevention, crib safety, and motor vehicle safety. Lobbyists work on local, state, and national levels to mold safety policies with public policies. Since its inception, the Safe Kids campaign has been a remarkable force in safety legislation. Social change involves the transformation of collective behavior, culture, public policy, or social institutions over time. Social problems are not the same with one another as each is complex, culturally embedded, and multifactorial. These are the things to be considered in designing evaluations to measure social change. Public will campaigns are significant and have impact to influence effective public opinion, social norms, community structures, networks individuals, perceptions of their political environment, and ultimately to achieve social change. Theories and concepts provided in this paper may be challenging to implement and complicated to evaluate, but with virtue of simultaneously operating on multiple levels of analysis and focusing on multiple outcomes, these are likely to be significant in creative or affecting meaningful, substantive, and enduring social change. That concludes my report, and thank you very much for your time. To facilitate discussion, I would like to ask the following. Which among the advocacy works provided in the Mobilizing Public Will for Social Change paper did you like most and why? Provide and narrate one social mobilization that mobilized the public will in the Philippines or in your area.